After a PCT and clean out phase, should you go onto a bulking stage or should you start dieting? Which is more effective? Stay tuned. I'll let you know. I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
Energy pouches are the wave of the future, and Underrated Muscles Locked In is first to bring it to you. With between 50 and 100 milligrams of caffeine per pouch, you can dial in the quick, clean energy and focus you need on the go. Simple, easy to use. Pop one between your cheek and gum to get you through your day, to get you through your workout. Code RX20, underratedmuscle.com. Get locked in today.
RX Television, RXMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, Christmas edition, or Christmas week edition of Ask Dave. I'm your host, Sadiq Faruqi. This is your weekly forum to ask Dave whatever's on your mind, be it bodybuilding, non-bodybuilding, diet, training, supplementation, anything and everything going on in and outside of the bodybuilding world. We go right into the questions. The first two questions on the show from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. First question: do you recommend cycle support supplements, or would you recommend just taking something like your mineralyze? I usually take both together. I've heard cycle support was crucial to keeping liver and other systems healthy.
The thing that you have to remember, when you're using anabolics and you're cycling, is that, you have to make sure that you have enough money to accomplish everything you want. Now, that means buying your food. That means taking the right supplements to support the growth and or the fat burning, if that's what you're trying to accomplish, depending on if you're on a bulk or you're on a cut. And then the extras, as I call them, the accoutrements, would be the health products that you might take to help detoxify yourself. So assuming you can afford everything, you'd want to take, obviously, getting the right food in, obviously. And then you'd want to take the right minerals, vitamins, trace metals, which is a product like my mineralyze product has that all in there in the right proportions, in the right amounts. It takes the guesswork out of everything. The new formula will be out probably in a week, and it's fortified with vitamin K2, and it has a higher dose of D3 in there, and it's got methylated folic acid. We amped up the mineralized to make it even better than it was before. Then you want to take your essential fatty acids. Obviously, that would be a product like my omega-lyze, omega-3s, omega-6s, in the right dosage and in the right proportion and ratio. Once you do that, and then you add a fiber supplement, that's pretty much what you need to support growth, in terms of all the protein synthesis reactions, all the fat-burning reactions that go on in your body. Then you can say to yourself, am I going to be putting stress on my liver? Am I going to be putting stress on my kidneys? Now, it's not a bad idea to take a liver detoxification product like Tudka, or a product like Liver Stable, which I sell at DavePalumbo.com from BLOODWORK. And that's going to keep the bile ducts flowing and get all the gunk out of the liver. You can do that throughout the entire cycle. Or as an option, if you don't have $1 million, to spend on supplementation, it's not an essential daily type of product. You can take it at the end of a cycle to kind of clean out, as we call it. And that's really up to you. Now, there's another product I sell called Kidney Stuff at DavePalumbo.com. I don't make it, but I sell it. It's a tremendous product in terms of lowering creatinine level, cleansing the kidneys, opening up those tubules so that they can filter the blood better. That's a product that if you have high creatinine on a regular basis, you probably should take every day. If not, once again, a post-cycle clean out type product, you do it for a month or two to clean out. So the detoxification products like liver, cleansing products and the kidney cleansing products, you can take that You don't have to do that all the time. You can do that, every 3 months or something like that, if it's more affordable for you. But the vitamins, minerals, trace metals, essential fats, and fiber should be taken every single day, just as like you take in your protein, you take your fats and your carbs. And those are needed to assist all the reactions that go on in your body. And if you don't take those, you're really cheating yourself. Because like I said, I've said this a million times, and I don't want to think I have Alzheimer's because I keep repeating myself, but it warrants repeating itself. I see guys in the gym, especially young guys, using pre-workouts, and I ask them if they're taking a multivitamin, multi-mineral, if they're taking an essential fat. They don't even know what it is. And they're like, no, should I be? So don't go taking what I call luxury items before taking the necessities. If you have the extra money and you can afford all of it, knock yourself out. That's great. Supplement companies like me love you guys because you buy everything, but not everyone could afford that. So use the essentials first, then add the luxury items.
Second question, again, these first two from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. I'm in PCT using your PCT protocol right now. I have 4 more weeks until I go back on cycle. Is it better to go into a bulk or utilize my sensitive androgen receptivity for putting on size or cut?
It doesn't really matter what you do because you're going to respond well. And I did a rant video. I don't know, it probably might be up after we launch this show, but because I'm sick of these lunatics online who have no educational background whatsoever, who like to wave studies that have no relevance about how the more steroids you take, the more your body responds to them. It's so idiotic and so ludicrous that my father used to hear people speak grammatically incorrectly, used to drive me crazy. But when I hear people speak, scientifically ignorant, it drives me crazy. And so I did a video on it. But once those androgen receptors are reprimed, because you've gone off and you've done a PCT, you've cleaned out, you could really do anything and get a response from it. Obviously, if most guys who clean out at the end of the year are going into a bulking cycle, right? Because they're over the winter, they're trying to put size on so they can compete in the fall. In the spring and summer. So they're going to get a better response of growth. But if you had to do a diet because you're going to do an early show, say in, maybe April or something like that, you're going to still respond. Those first 6-8 weeks you're on that cycle, even though you're dieting, you're going to still grow. You might not grow as much as if you were eating unlimited food, but you're going to grow anyway. So anything you do anabolic cycle wise after that off period is going to benefit you. And like I said, most people who clean out at the end of the year, like now, this time, which is why we're getting a lot of these questions, are going to go into some sort of a growth phase, whether it be for 6 or 8 weeks or it be for 6 months. It's not going to matter because it's the first 8, 12 weeks that you're going to get the best results from that. So like I said, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. You're going to get a result no matter what. But that's why it's good to kind of clean out at the end of the year when you can then go on to a growing cycle and get the best benefits out of that.
Before we go to the rest of the questions, our friends at Titan Medical Center have a BLOODWORK special during this Christmas week. They're encouraging people to check their hormones if they haven't already. $130 for males and $200 for females. This deal is good only up until Friday.
I didn't realize, Sid, how many people don't have health insurance in this day and age. I thought almost everyone had it, but a lot of people don't have it, especially bodybuilders, because they don't see. Look, I did it too in the beginning of my bodybuilding career. I'm like, I'm not going to spend money on health insurance. I got to buy, food, and I got to buy supplements and all that stuff. So it's not a good idea not to have health insurance if you can afford it or if you have a job that can give it to you. But if you don't have it, this is a great deal. I'm telling you. Just to get your testosterone checked can cost $130. So the fact that Titan's giving you a full workup and blood panel for $130 as a male, if you don't have insurance, I would take advantage of this, especially because a lot of guys are cleaning out right now. So this is the perfect time to get tested. Women's panel is a little more expensive because they do extra, tests on progesterone, estrogen, all that kind of stuff. But even that for $200 for a women's panel is really, really reasonable. If you had to go to the Quest Labs or LabCorp, you're going to pay a fortune, cash out of your pocket. So I would take advantage of this. Once again, it's only till Friday. Tell them Dave Palumbo, RX Muscle sent you, and they'll take care of you. Plus, obviously, once you sign up with them, you can buy some of their peptides if you want, or some of their you can sign up for the hormone replacement. So once you're on the books there and you got blood work with them, you can pretty much do anything you want, and that's a huge advantage, obviously, to going outside and getting your own blood work done, and then trying to get in there later. So you're kind of killing two birds with one stone. Also, I wanted to mention those first two questions were from the Dave Palumbo Experience app, which is an app you can download from your iTunes store if you have an iPhone, or your Android store if you have one of those systems. And it's $29 a month. You get me as your coach in your back pocket. We have a huge amount of people who subscribe to the app, and I want to thank you guys for the support over the last several years that we've had this app going.
I was going to go to the questions from our Instagram page, our Facebook page, and our YouTube community page. I had some kid ask me the other day how I'm so big but so weak because I don't ego lift, period. So how's that possible? I personally don't think that I'm not that I don't think I'm big, not compared to the image, I guess, but I guess it's stuck in my dysmorphic mind. So it's an interesting narrative, because I think a lot of bodybuilders, who don't go in there ego lifting or quote unquote powerlifting, maybe there is a perception that they're just not training hard enough. Well, what do you say to that?
I never worry about what people say about me in the gym. I don't care. Sometimes I'm doing like bench press and I'm like, I come down with the bar slow. I squeeze on the way up. I don't, nowadays I don't use heavy weights anymore because, there's no reason to. I have shoulder replacements, but, I lift. It's challenging to me. And I think that you have to put that aside, because people don't judge you by how much you lift. They judge you by how you look. So if you look great and you're obviously getting great results from the way you're lifting, then that speaks volumes for itself. And you know what? Maybe more people will start emulating how you're training, as opposed to the guy in the gym who's, doing, 100, partial reps and looks like crap and runs around the gym screaming like a maniac, lifting super heavy weights. So I never really worried about what people thought about me, because I know what I was feeling in the gym. And when I was first coming up and I was learning how to train and I was doing full range of motion and my strength slowly but surely started increasing, that was all the validation I needed. So I don't think you really should be worried about validation from other people, or that what other people think about you. Because once you worry about what other people think about you, you're never going to make improvements to your body. You're going to wind up copying all the stupid shit that they do in the gym, and that's not going to yield the results you're looking for.
Good one here about just as far as clenching. Now, it's a topic that comes up a lot when sleeping, and people use all sorts of like mouth guards, other modalities. Wondering if you've heard of anyone straining their jaw or chewing muscles in their face due to heavy training. I've recently had some painful teeth, and x-rays show nothing wrong, but the dentist said that I've been clenching while training.
Yeah, that's a real thing, that I didn't, I was, to be honest with you, when I was in prison 20 years ago, in 2005, there was a dentist in there with me. He was in there because he was writing, pain pill prescriptions and stuff like that. But we would all work out together, and he would say, you really should get a mouth guard when you're training. He goes, when your jaw is aligned, he says, you actually train, your strength increases. It's a known commodity. A lot of the Olympic lifters all wear mouth guards. And he said, plus it'll prevent you from, grinding your teeth and breaking any teeth. Now, I thought he was crazy, and I was like, I'm not going to get a mouth guard to work out with. I'm never going to use it. But I did find out later that I clench. Maybe because as you get older, you have more responsibility. The dentist said I'm starting to chip some of my teeth. He says, you must be grinding your teeth at night. And I got a mouth guard that I wear at night. And, it definitely is saving my teeth. However, a lot of guys do clench in the gym. I don't do that. I know that I don't do it in the gym because I'm very conscious of how I lift. But if you clench in the gym, it's probably a good idea to get a mouth guard. And according to this dentist, and I believe him because he was a smart dude, it might actually benefit your lifting and make you actually stronger by aligning your jaw properly. But yeah, you don't want to make your teeth fall apart. Clenching can definitely cause that TMJ, where the muscle in the jaw bothers you, but it can also cause the teeth to actually start chipping and cracking, and that's not good either. So my suggestion is, in your case, I would go get a mouth guard for sure, and get one custom made. Don't go buy one off the shelf.
Question about natural production. Does your body stop producing natural GH after you stop using it? And if so, how long does that last?
Growth hormone doesn't work on like that simple feedback loop that like thyroid hormone works on or that testosterone works on. It's almost like insulin. It's pulsatilely released throughout the day. So when blood sugar is low, your body releases GH. When you sleep, your body pulses GH. After training or any kind of like physical exertion, your body pulses GH. So by taking GH, you don't really shut down natural growth hormone release. Now, if you took it, I guess theoretically, if you took it all day long, like every 2 hours, I mean, maybe you would temporarily shut it down. But like I said, it's like insulin. Even if you take insulin, you might not produce as much insulin because your body doesn't have the insulin requirements because you're supplementing, but you still will produce insulin. In other words, if you're sleeping in the middle of the night and your liver releases glucose and you're not awake to take an insulin shot, your body's going to release insulin. So because it's pulsed out constantly throughout the day. So GH doesn't stop getting produced. Now, the difference between GH and insulin is as we get older, we don't produce as much GH. So that's why I think adults and, people that are over the age of 21 years old usually get benefits out of taking additional GH because our GH levels are lower than when we're in our growth stage 16, 17, 18, where we're pulsing GH all day long, and that's when we're making most of our growth gains. So yes, as adults, it does benefit us to take growth hormone. As a kid, there's no reason to do it. We're already producing copious amounts of it.
Question about where I just put it, about having children, and obviously you do get a lot of requests for your baby making protocol, and we get it on our Instagram DMs as well, and we just forward it to you, and you've been very generous about sending your protocol to anybody that asks for it. I'm 34, have not had children yet. I've done 2 years of PEDs in my late 20s with no obvious issues, had regular checkups. I'd like to try PEDs again, but I'm fearful that it may prevent me from having children. What is the likelihood of PEDs at this stage of my life impacting my ability to have kids?
In my experience, okay, and I can keep saying every year that I'm alive, I have more and more experience, right? Because now I'm 57 years old. In my experience, I've never seen a single person, no matter how much they abuse steroids, no matter how long they stayed on them, not be able to have kids, okay, after deciding to have kids and using my protocol. There's not been one person, not a single person. I would have to imagine that if taking anabolic steroids prevented or caused an issue with having kids later in life when you decide to have them, that there would be a lot of instances of this. But I see none. I don't even see one instance. There's not a single instance. The only person I ever knew that couldn't have kids is because they had testicular cancer. They had both testicles removed. So they didn't have any testicles. But other than that, there's not been a single person that it hasn't worked for. And that goes for women too. And so I know some women bodybuilders that really, were taking some heavy duty stuff. And I never thought they would be able to, have kids, and they had kids. So the reproductive system seems to be very fluid, very dynamic. It seems to be able to be turned on and turned off relatively easy. And because of that, I wouldn't worry. That there's a lot of things to worry about when you take steroids, like liver problems, high blood pressure that can cause kidney problems, high red blood cells, all that stuff. But losing fertility permanently is not one of the things that I would worry about. And if when it's time for you to have kids, you follow the protocol that I put out. You can reach out to me. Everyone reaches out to me. I send it to everyone for free, and you'll have kids. That's not a concern that you should have.
Question about creatine. I know taking creatine will store more water into the muscle, giving a fuller look, but is it okay to simultaneously take a natural diuretic to pull excessive water from under the skin, or is this just a contradiction?
What was the last part of that question?
I guess simultaneously taking a natural diuretic to pull the excessive water, but he's asking if that's a contradiction. Yeah,
it's a contradiction. The whole idea behind taking creatine is that it volumizes the muscle cell, meaning that it puts fluid into the cell and makes it swell. A volumized muscle cell or a well-hydrated muscle cell is a very anabolic muscle cell. Muscles like to be hydrated. When they're dehydrated, they don't grow very well and they don't perform very well. Superhydrated cells perform best and actually grow really well. So that's one of the benefits of how creatine helps you put on muscle, because it hydrates the cell. Now, sometimes you get a little spillover and you can get a little bloated from creatine. But if you take a diuretic, first of all, you should never take diuretics during the year ever, because it's going to mess up your sodium balance in your body. And a dehydrated person, like I said, is a weaker person. You're going to get headaches because you're going to feel like you have a hangover because your brain's going to get dehydrated. Don't ever take diuretics during the year. I know a lot of neurotic people that do it. It's very unhealthy for you. Your body does not like to be dehydrated. It's not good for your kidneys, and it's certainly not good for muscle growth. So yes, if you're a neurotic and you think that the little bit of water you're going to be retaining from taking creatine in the off season is going to mess with your head, don't take it. That's my suggestion.
Take 2 more questions. Full disclosure, we're going to have a live episode of After Hours following this recording of Ask Dave. TREN. Did TREN used to be a staple steroid during the Mass Monster era of bodybuilding, or is it just idolized nowadays?
When I started taking anabolics in the early 1990s, there was no TREN acetate around. It was originally called Finijet. It was a veterinary drug that I know all the guys in the late 80s talked about being a great drug. It disappeared. They got rid of it. The veterinary supply people stopped making it, and it disappeared. But there was Parabolin, which was a longer acting metabolite, or a longer acting form of trenbolone. And everyone was using Parabolin ampules. And they were 75 milligrams, 76 milligrams per ampule. We would use like 2 a week if you could even get them. And that's what we used. And it worked really well. And that you'd use it contest prep, you'd use it in the off season a little bit. And no one really abused the trenbolone because it was expensive, and they came in these, like I said, these single amps, and sometimes you paid $22, $25 per amp. So no one was using more than 2 a week at that point. Then all of a sudden, they started producing something called Finaplex, which was a pellet they were putting in the cows for them to gain more muscle and more beef and increase their beef output. And guys figured out how to take these Finaplex pellets and grind them down and remove the fillers and turn it back into trenbolone acetate. And so then that became available in the late part of the 1990s, and we started using that. And that was the only form of Finijet, of trenbolone acetate that was available. I know I had a guy who used to make it for me. And then obviously, as you got into the 2000s, there was a couple companies, and then as the underground labs came about, then you started getting it more available again. But that's really the synthesis. So there was a period during where you would call the Mass Monster era, from the early 90s to like the late 90s, where there was no trenbolone acetate. Everyone just used Parabolin. Ask Kevin Levrone. He used 3 a week, because he had a little more money, he had a contract. But that was it. I mean, that's what guys used. And obviously trenbolone is trenbolone because guys looked amazing on it.
Take one more question, and this is one that's been obviously floating around now for the better part of the last 3 weeks, and that is your thoughts on the rise of quote-unquote PMMA cases. Again, a lot of them have been alleged. Mm-hmm. Has it been a thing before? People already have a negative look in the sport, being drug addicts, superficial, fake, etc. Now PMMAs, it brings a real light onto what fake is. No work is really done, no blood, sweat, and tears or making that progress, or whatever you call it, a scam essentially. So I'll kind of add to this question in this context, because this has been one of the things that have been bandied about during this whole PMMA discussion for years now. People are injecting whatever you want to call it, be it Estaclean, be it synthol, or what have you. Is there a tinge of hypocrisy in terms of the narrative that's going around right now, that we're kind of zeroing in on one alleged usage of PMMA? What do you make of all this as far as the superficial angle of things?
Yeah, it's absolutely hypocritical, because guys have been spot injecting and site injecting stuff for years, and from synthol to just regular. Ask Greg. Greg never did synthol. Greg Valentino. He shot a bottle of test propionate into his arms every 3 times a week. And that's the same thing. You're volumizing a muscle with oil, whether it be a steroid or a non-reactive oil like synthol, which that's why I always said synthol was a safer way to site inject a body part, because if you used a good quality, synthol, it was not, there was no bacteria in it, and it had a use in the sense that it didn't have all that drug in there. So you weren't overwhelming your body with like thousands of milligrams of drug like Greg did, which was insane. But guys have been doing that for years. They've been using collagen as fillers in their, women use it in their face, people have been injecting, fat into their butt, to do the Brazilian butt lift. So, I mean, this has been going on for years. Breast implants, pec implants, calf implants. This is just another level. I mean, I don't know if Rich Pianer ever used PMMA. I mean, that was the story. I heard some people said he used silicone. It doesn't even matter at this point, but I guess he was the first one to experiment with something that was more of a permanent type of like thing. But you could tell that Rich's arms didn't look real. It didn't matter because he wasn't competing on stage, so he can do whatever he wants. It was more of a look he was looking for. But if the average person took PMMA and injected it into their quads or into their arms, they would look so ridiculous. You would see it in 3 seconds. So when I look at some of these athletes that are being accused of using it, I don't see it. I haven't seen it in one of the people that they have actually accused of using it. I've seen it in some like retarded people that that look, although I know retarded is not a term that we use anymore, but in people who are ridiculously using this PMMA or motor oil or whatever they're injecting. You see these Brazilians and these other crazy, South American people just injecting ridiculous amounts of oil into their arm, and they have these blown up body parts that don't even look like muscle. But I have not seen it in a professional athlete. If you could get some kind of sight enhancement done to yourself and no one can tell, okay, I'm not talking about the self-proclaimed Candace Owens, Stephen A. Smith over there, Matt from Muscle Discord, who thinks that he's a Sherlock Holmes, and he's going to show that Nathalia made improvements from last year, and therefore, she must be using that. That's BS. I'm talking looking at a physique and saying that body part that doesn't look right because it's lumpy or it's got this or got that. I don't see that. Her physique has been improving steadily ever since she started. I think it's a disgrace that people are, accusing her of doing that. I don't see it. If I saw it and it looked ridiculous, because it would be very hard to make it look symmetrical and make it look like a real muscle, I'd be the first person to point it out. I've pointed out when Hadi's shoulders were all messed up or Ramy had some issues, with some body parts. You can see that very readily. If someone can, if people are using PMMA, and we can't tell, okay, then reports that they supposedly went to some clinic in Brazil to do it is not enough to penalize them. You have to be able to see that there's an issue, because people use enhancements all the time in bodybuilding. And to vilify people because you got some whistleblower, God knows who this person is, who claims that he knows that this person went to this clinic on this day and did this procedure. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Show me the results. Show me the physique. And if the physique doesn't look right, I'll be the first person to say that should be marked down. And that's exactly what the judges will tell you too. And that's what they said back in the synthol era, where everyone was using too much synthol at some point. They said, if we can see that it looks like a fake body part, we're going to mark it down. And they still do it to this day. You see guys with lumps in their shoulders getting marked down all the time. Iris Kyle was the reigning Miss Olympia. She did the Arnold Classic. She had won that many times before. And she came in with a big lump on her glutes. And you know what? They didn't even place her top 5. And she was the reigning Miss Olympia. So these judges have no problem marking down suspicious body parts. Nathalia wasn't suspicious. And the fact that they would accuse Mr. Olympia, Derek Lunsford, of using it is a disgrace as well. What they're doing is they're trying to take away from these people's titles that they won. And that's disgusting, because you know what? Derek's Mr. Olympia, Nathalia's Miss Physique Olympia, and that's a title that we should be celebrating, not trying to vilify. And like I said, I find it disgusting. And
that's going to do for this. There you go. That's going to do for this episode of Ask Dave. A Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays from our entire team to you and your families. We thank you for watching and for all your support throughout the course of the calendar year. All new episode right now on the channel, Heavy Muscle Radio, and of course, yesterday's episode of the After Hours podcast. If you haven't already done so, subscribe below, hit the notification bell. If you like what you're watching, hit the like button, comment below, and as always, we appreciate all of your support. For Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next time.